Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you see? Do you see just one PowerPoint, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because my screen looks a bit funny. You're all a bit early, isn't it 12 o'clock? So keen, is it, to start? Okay, I'll wait till 12, okay? Still another 10 minutes. I just wanted to set up to make sure that everything was okay. Afternoon now. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon now.
Waalaikumsalam, Ustaz.
Hi. Very quiet out there. Okay, I hope you can see the PowerPoint in front of you. But I already uploaded the PowerPoint in the what do you call it? In this chat group. So hopefully you'll be able to access it. Yeah. It's 35 here. I think there's still 12 more to come. But I'll just start. Yeah, because it's already 12 anyway. So not fair to the rest of you who've already been waiting. Okay. So what I wanted to do today is just to talk about taxation, overview of the taxation system, and maybe give you some information, some tips about how you can approach your assignment, your coursework. Yeah? And then next week I will go through the lectures based on the different chapters in the textbook, but more of an overview rather than detailed tax computational. Yeah, so that I'll give you a bit more detail on each of the taxation and the importance of the tax and why are these taxes actually been put in place. Okay. On my screen it's so small, I don't know how to make it big, but okay, I'll try and strain my eyes and look at it. So, the importance of taxes. Why is tax important? I'm talking more about the UK tax system because your syllabus is the UK tax, but of course it can be relevant and applicable to any other jurisdiction. Yeah. So government impose charges on their citizens and businesses as a means of raising revenue, because government need to raise revenue in order for them to meet their budgetary demand and expenses. Okay, so this includes financing of government public projects, as well as making the business environment in the country conducive. So what do you do is government spend on infrastructure, which could be physical infrastructure, legal infrastructure, infrastructure relating to the roads, ports, and telecommunication and everything else. Yeah. So without taxes, government will not be able to meet the demands of society. Yeah, taxes are crucial because government collect money and uses it to finance social projects. I'll go through each of the main components of government expenditure. So why is it important? The importance of tax to society. Health. The health system is very important in any country because without taxes, government cannot make contribution to the health sector, and the contribution to the health sector providing free health, like in the UK, the National Health Service, which is free service for citizens, they will not be able to support that system. The taxes go towards funding health service such as social healthcare, medical research, social security, and other medical related services. So you need a lot of funding to do research and development, and especially with COVID, a lot of research and development has been done in trying to find what is the best vaccine, or the vaccine that has actually been introduced or recommended by the World Health Organization, whether it's Pfizer and Moderna and all the others, still need to go through detailed research testing to see what the side effects are, how good it is in terms of its suitability, in terms of its immunization, if you do get vaccinated. And that costs a lot of money. A lot of money has been spent in terms of investment. So government needs to get the money from somewhere. In Brunei, of course, with COVID, obviously we have the isolation center, the research center, the different testing centers. Everything needs funding. So obviously the government tries to raise money by setting up the COVID-19 fund. Yeah? If you go to your bank account, the bank apps, you can see donations, payments, and one of it includes the COVID-19 relief fund. So those are ways that government try and raise money in the absence of any other taxation system. Now, one of the biggest budget that's always put aside will be for education. Just like in Brunei, obviously, education is critical, very important. Education is still free unless you go to a private school. And not only that, at a higher level education, as a local, you also get paid to study. not a scholarship, but it's an allowance. So it is still an expense for government. Yeah. So education can be one of the most deserving recipients of tax revenue. The education system is important because we need to build the next generation of highly educated, motivated people, and that is done through the education system. Government puts a lot of importance in the development of human capital, and education is central to that development. Revenue from taxes is channeled to funding, furnishing, and monitoring public education system, which includes funding of universities and research programs. Now, one thing, if you look at university ranking in the world and the credibility of the university, it is not in terms of number of graduates, but it is how much research does a university do? What are the results of research? What are the intellectual properties that the universities has, developed, and what has, universities invented, found in terms of research, in terms of maybe new medicine, new innovation, new theory, and things like that. If a university has got a fantastic research and fantastic research output, a lot of money is spent on research and development. So if you do read the newspapers, if you do look at the internet, a lot of these big super rich people, Bill Gates and so on, they do give a lot of their money to universities for research. So for example, Bill Gates give a lot of research in terms of research and development on polio, malaria, try to eradicate famine and everything else around the world. Yeah. So health and education is an important recipient of government budget. You have any questions? You just ask, yeah? Don't or anything, yeah? Let's not make it a one-way traffic, which I assume 90% of the time will be one-way traffic. Anyway, yeah. So the importance of tax society includes governments. What is governance in terms of taxation? Governance is a critical component in the smooth running of any country's affairs. Poor governance will have far-reaching implications on the entire country, with a heavy toll on economic growth. What does governance mean? Is you have a fair tax system, a system that is fair and equitable for everyone. But of course, no tax system is perfect, because the more you try to tax the rich, the more they will try and find ways of reducing their tax liability. The more complicated you make the tax, there's more ways that people try and find ways of trying to divert their money, their profit, so that they pay less tax everywhere else. Yeah. Good governance ensures that money collected is utilized in a manner that benefits citizens and businesses in the country. So whatever tax system that you implement in Brunei or anywhere in the world, it has to be utilized, the money collected, and benefits citizens and businesses. It is important that how do businesses benefit? Again, the government will invest on infrastructure, make sure that industrial land, the land is properly laid out, properly developed, so that when you build a factory, you already have all the supporting requirements to start a factory, the roads, sewage, electricity, water, and everything else. Yeah. So the government provides the basic infrastructure, or government provides tax incentives so that when you start a new business, you do not have to pay tax for X number of years. So then it is okay. When you give tax incentive, what happens? You do not collect tax. But on the reverse side is, when you provide incentive, when company grows, they provide employment opportunities. Yeah. So that reduces unemployment and increases the company's capacity to expand. So there's a bit of give and take in any taxation system. I don't know what that laser point is. I pressed that, nothing happened. Okay, without proper and functioning form of governance, there will be no effective protection of public interest. And if you look at Africa, Africa is a very, very rich country because they are rich in minerals. They have diamond, they have a lot of gemstones, of course, oil and gas. But a lot of African countries are rich in resources, but their people are very poor. That is because the government is very corrupt. So when you have a corrupt government system where the tax revenue is used for their benefit and not for the country's benefit, then the proper governance is not there to protect the public. Okay, well, it's getting smaller, the fonts. Okay, the other important thing that you need to look at is, for example, infrastructure development, transportation, and housing. Government will use money collected to fund sectors that are crucial for the well-being of their citizens, such as security meaning physical security, the army, the police, research, and environmental protection. Environmental protection is very important because what we don't want is for people to start chopping the forest for the benefit of their own business, for example, in terms of furniture, logging, illegal logging, because when you chop forest, then you reduce your increase the carbon emission because you do not have enough forest to absorb the carbon dioxide to produce oxygen in photosynthesis process. Some monies are channeled to fund projects such as pension, unemployment benefits, and childcare. So in the UK, when you work, obviously you pay tax, you pay national service, you contribute to a lot of things, but the government has a pension system and an unemployment benefit system. Yeah? So if you are unemployed, you can claim unemployment benefit. So at least you do not live in poverty. You do get some allowances for you to survive on a monthly basis. And in order for the government to do that, they need to have also a proper tax system, a collection system, a consistent collection system to make sure that they can still support the unemployment benefit. But of course, one of the drawbacks of unemployment benefit is there are people who just too lazy to work. Yeah, they know that they're going to get allowance anyway, so they can't be bothered to work, so it doesn't motivate people at the lower income level. Okay. Taxes can also affect the state of economic growth of a country. Sometimes you may want to reduce tax to encourage companies to plow back the profit into the business, to expand the business, so that they can provide employment opportunities. Taxes generally contribute to the GDP of a country. Because of these contributions, taxes can help spur economic growth, which in turn has a ripple effect on the country's economic growth, which in turn can raise the standard of living, increasing job creations, and so on. So if you can increase jobs or the company can increase its wealth, then individuals who are employed also have a lot of benefit, higher income, higher spending, and so which is an economic booster within the economy. Yeah. Government also uses taxes as a deterrent for undesirable activities. So what are undesirable activities in Brunei? Obviously, is alcohol, tobacco, tobacco smoking, and gambling. So, although alcohol and smoking, alcohol is illegal, I mean haram, and smoking is illegal in Brunei, but obviously there are still people who smuggle in, and there are hefty taxes, for these items. And in the UK and a lot of countries, cigarettes and alcohol are quite highly taxed, and that is quite a good source of. One is a good source of revenue, and the other one is obviously to deter people from smoking too much and from drinking too much. And in Singapore, obviously, with the gambling tax, if you're a citizen to go into places of like casinos or that, you need to pay a large amount to go in to gamble. So they're trying to deter people from gambling. Yeah. So this is done by imposing high excise levies on these products, resulting in the rising of the costs of these products to discourage people from buying or selling them. But more to discourage people from buying them. There will always be people who will try and sell these items. Okay. So what is the importance of taxation to businesses? For business to flourish in any country, there has to be a good infrastructure, such as roads, telecommunication, power. The infrastructure is developed by government or through close involvement of the government. So, for example, in order to get better accessibility from Brunei Muara to Tebur, the bridge was developed, was constructed. Yeah. So now you have easy access from Bandar to Bangka, yeah, all by road. But in other countries, how would they finance it? Because a bridge costs a lot of money. If the government does not have sufficient tax revenue, the only way to reduce costs is to impose toll. Yeah. So I don't know. When the bridge is fully functional, are they going to charge toll? Would you agree to, $20, $30? Or because you're a Bruneian, it's your right to use the bridge for free? Yeah. So the government has to think about what are the implications if they decide to charge toll. But if you go to Miri, for example, you pay 10 ringgit to just go across a small little bridge. Nobody complains, nobody makes any noise, yeah? So I think if we start doing it for tomorrow, maybe that's one way that government can actually can increase revenue. Because the important thing with any infrastructural project, whether it's building roads, bridges, you need to put 5% aside for maintenance costs. Now, if you don't collect money through toll or any other means, then the government need to put budget aside to pay for all this infrastructural maintenance. Yeah. The worst thing to do is you decide not to do anything for 5 to 10 years, and suddenly 10 years later, you decide to do maintenance work. By that time, it will probably cost more because the building may have gone into massive dilapidation. The bridge may have reached a stage where it is, a lot more repair work will need to be done. So it's important to have annual maintenance in the budget process. Okay, tax revenue collected is plowed into the development of these infrastructures and in turn promotes economic activities throughout the country. Improving the ports, improving the airport, improving the roads, accessibility. Yeah. The concept of taxation is important to business, as the government can also fund back the money into the economy in form of loans or other funding schemes, SME funding, new business development funding, and so on. Taxes also help raise the standard of living. The higher the standard of living, the stronger and higher the level of consumption is most likely to be. So as the economy grows, the standard of living grows, then the company becomes more developed. Yeah, instead from an underdeveloped, low income, we become highly developed. I think Brunei is considered as developed, as a developed nation because our GDP per capita is more than 30,000 US per person. Yeah. So from that perspective, it's considered as a developed country. Business flourish when there is a market for their product and services, resulting in higher economic demand and consumption as well. So as economic activities grows, we're talking about UK population of 70, 80 million. There is a big domestic market. Brunei, 400,000 population, small domestic market. Although there may be domestic demand, but the economic growth will not be that significant compared to a bigger country. China, 1.4 billion. So even with COVID, even with the borders closing in terms of China's international trade, they can still survive because they have a large domestic economy, 1.4 billion. Just like India, 1.1 to 1.2 billion domestic market. So some countries, they're huge enough that when the international side is compromised, they can still survive due to the domestic economy. Of course, if you look at Brunei, a lot of companies are struggling to survive within the economy, so exporting products also becomes a bit more difficult for now. Yeah. So it is important that citizens become good corporate citizens and pay the taxes. Yeah, and the government has a fair and equitable system so that when people pay the tax, they know that the money has been used for the right purposes. So that's why it's good governance. When you have a budget, you know where the money is going to be spent. And if you have a good taxation system, when you pay the tax, at least you can see, you can look around that, okay, the infrastructure is improving, internet is improving, the Wi-Fi is improving, everything else is improving, accessibility is improving, standard of living is improving, education is improving, healthcare service is improving. Yeah. So if you can see that tangible benefit, then people don't mind paying the taxes. But as I said, some countries, especially in Africa and some Latin American countries, people pay tax, but they just don't see the benefit. Yeah. So then people will find ways of ensuring that they don't pay tax at all. Okay, so what are the good taxation principles that you need to be aware of. Yeah. And this actually, the principle of good taxation was formulated by Adam Smith, one of the top economists, in his book, The Wealth of Nations. And this is 1776, more than 200 over years ago. And the basic principles form a backbone of any taxation system in the world. The main good taxation principles in the modern world are, and I'll probably go through one by one. Yeah? Fairness, simplicity, and ease of compliance, transparency and certainty, administrative ease and neutrality. Okay, so what is fairness? Taxpayers in a similar financial condition should be paying similar amount of taxes. So if my salary is 5,000 a month, another person is 5,000 a month, you know, we all have two children, and all the facts are the same. We should be paying exactly the same tax. I cannot be paying, you know, a higher tax than him or her. Yeah, that means there's something wrong with the taxation system. So there should be a neutrality in terms of the tax system, that people of equal level should be paying the same amount of tax. Okay. The principle calls for equity in distributing tax burden among taxpayers. As I mentioned last week, if we make the tax system too burdensome, then people may decide to leave the country. 40 years ago, I think the highest tax rate in the UK was 83% individual tax. So for every $1 or £1 you earn, 83 pence will go towards tax. So you only get 17 pence. So it is a disincentive for people to reside in the UK. So a lot of the wealthy people decided to change their tax residency to Monte Carlo, Luxembourg, and a lot of these offshore haven. Yeah, but of course now it's a bit more difficult to find offshore haven because of the legislation that's put in place by the OECD. Yeah. So hence, taxpayers with the same income level should pay the same amount of tax, and taxpayers with greater ability to pay should pay more than those with lower ability to pay. So in an equitable system, if my salary is 5,000, someone is 1,000, I should be willing to pay more tax than someone with a salary of 1,000. And if there's good corporate governance, I know that my tax is going towards education, towards medical infrastructure, then I should be. Nobody likes to pay tax, but at least I should be happy that I'm contributing to the development of the economy. Yeah. Okay. So there are different types of scheme. Progressive. This is where taxpayers pay a higher share of their income in taxes than poor taxpayers. Regressive is the opposite. Low-income taxpayers pay a higher share of their income in taxes, or proportional or flat rate. All taxpayers pay the same proportion of their income in taxes. So whether your salary is 1,000, 100,000, 1 million, you pay a flat rate of a certain amount. And the progressive tax rate is the higher your salary, then the higher your tax rate. So you can start at 20%, maybe move to 30%, then to 40%. Now, if you look at the textbook, at the tax tables, look at it there. Page 493. If you have your textbook in front of you, or if you have the tax tables in front of you. The progressive tax system is, if you look at the first table where it says income tax, there's basic rate between 1 to 34,500 pounds, you pay 20% tax. Between 34,500 to 150,000 pounds, you're paying 40% tax. And if your income is more than 150,000, then you're paying 45% tax. Yeah. So that's progressive system. So the higher your income, the higher your tax rate progressively increases. Yeah. So a lot of countries have this kind of tax system. Not many countries have flat rate, simply because what they want to do is for the richer, for the people in high income, to be able to use the tax to support the lower income. Yeah. So that's what the tax system is. It's a distribution of income from high level to low level, so that the people with high income, the tax from their income can be used to help support the lower income level. Okay. So there are three systems: progressive, whether it's regressive or proportional. Most countries tend to do a progressive tax system. Yeah. So that's how you use the tax tables in the textbook. Yeah. Okay. What's the next one? Simplicity and the ease of compliance. This is very straightforward in terms of any taxation system. Taxpayers should easily understand why the tax is imposed and how to comply with the tax regulation. Actually, if you look at chapter 35 of the Brunei Laws of Brunei, which is the Income Tax Act. In the Income Tax Act, there is already a section since 1949 on personal income tax. And it is quite easy to read. If you're bored, you got nothing to do, just go to chapter 35 of the Laws of Brunei, which is the Income Tax Act. You can see a section on personal income tax. Yeah, what is income? What are allowable expenses, and so on and so forth. So all you need to do is for tomorrow, for there to be a government gazette to say that with effect from 1st January 2022, the personal income tax rate is X%. Then the whole part of the Income Tax Act is already enacted and enforced. Yeah? So we don't have to redo the taxation law in Brunei because it's already there. Yeah. And the important thing, it has to be easy to understand and easy to comply. So obviously, whatever tax system that you recommend or that the government recommend should be easy to follow, easy to understand. Because the more complex it is, then the easier it is for people to do tax planning or tax avoidance. Yeah, the most complicated tax system in the world, from what I understand, is the German tax system. It changes every year, and it is quite complicated. Yeah? The UK tax system is not too bad. I mean, probably the easiest is probably the Brunei tax system so far. Yeah. Okay. Transparency and certainty. A taxpayer should understand when and where they pay the taxes. Okay. They can easily see the link between their tax burden and the amount of public goods and services provided to them. Yeah. So if you do implement a tax system in Brunei, so at the moment you don't pay tax in Brunei. There's no personal income tax. So if you want to complain about the education, you want to complain about the medical services or infrastructure, you do not have a powerful voice now, since you are not contributing to any of the government revenue. But when the government starts imposing personal income tax, should there be one, or should you recommend it, then you become a voice. Yeah, you can become a critic because it is your salary, the tax that you're paying, that is helping to support government services, to pay government salaries, to provide the government services, to provide all the infrastructure and the different projects that the government carry out. Yeah, so then it's very important that you as taxpayers, or we as taxpayers, understand what the tax is, where it's been paid, and how the money has been spent. Okay, so transparency and certainty is very important. Administrative ease, like anything else, the cost of tax collection should be minimized. In other words, it should be easy. Yeah, it is important to keep the balance between the cost of tax enforcement and tax compliance. If you make the tax system complicated, then the only people that benefit are tax consultants, because a lot of companies will need to recruit someone with the relevant tax skills and background to be able to help them doing the tax computations. And like anything else, the more complicated you make it, the easier it is for people to try and circum the system or cheat the system. Neutrality, in other words, the tax system should minimize economic inefficiency and welfare losses and be neutral to the economic agent's behavior. Yeah, you want to make sure that whatever system that you put in place, there should be no inefficiencies, and the revenue that is collected has been utilized to the maximum possible usage in terms of running an efficient economic system and economic environment. Okay, so what is it in summary? The principles call for low tax rates. The principles call for low tax rates imposed on a broad tax base and limited list of exemptions. Now in Brunei, obviously for corporate tax, because we want to encourage people to open business, if you have an income of turnover of less than 1 million, you do not have to pay tax, because we want to encourage entrepreneurship. We want to encourage people to do business. We want to ensure that SMEs and micro industries provide opportunities for employment. Okay, if you start a pioneer business in Brunei, something that has never been done, then you can apply for pioneer status. In other words, you do not pay tax for between 5 to 13 years, depending on the investment that you put in. So again, it is not a loss in revenue to the government, but hopefully it is an opportunity to provide employment and an increase in the standard of living and the style of living for employees and the people and the owners of the company. Yeah. Implementation of famous principle is seen differently in, of course, different societies. It is difficult to fully implement all the principles within one tax system. There are still taxes that are imposed on specific categories of people or consumption for certain luxurious goods, taxation, alcohol, tobacco, and gaming tax. Yeah. In some countries, paying tax entails filing in numerous tax forms and reports to comply with national legislation, thereby violating the principles of simplicity and convenience. I think Brunei, to be honest, if you do have time, go to the STARS website, which is the System for Taxation and Administrative Revenue Services. But the only problem is you can't really open it to do. But in terms of the filing, the tax filing, the online filing, I think Brunei has one of the simple and easy to understand online filing tax system. My only criticism of the system is for any online system, you should be able to key in all the information within the system so that once you key in whether it's your fixed assets, your additions, all your expenses, your depreciation, and all the other figures that's required, and the system should automatically be able to calculate your tax computations. But the way it's done in the system is certain schedules are in the system, but you still need to submit separately another detailed tax computation. So to me, I think that's duplication of work. I think the tax system will need to be improved a little bit. I've mentioned this to the tax revenue division that for an online portal, it is exactly what it is, an online portal where you just key in information. The only thing that you need to upload is additional information, for example, the audited financial statements. Yeah, so audited financial statement is something that you key in, is something that is externally produced, and then you just load it into the system. Yeah, so it's important that it has to be easy. Yeah, and there's not many forms to submit. The UK tax system is not too bad actually, because in one form you have everything from your savings, non-savings, your dividends, property income is all included in one form. Yeah? So you don't have to do separate filing for each part of your income that you receive. So if you have employment income is one, you have property is another form. If you have dividend income is another form. That is not so in the UK because everything is consolidated into one tax return. Then the taxation is calculated automatically. Yeah, but when I was working in the UK, I have a fantastic system. I don't do any tax filing. It is all done for me by KPMG. Yeah. So it's a pay as you earn system for me. So I don't have to worry about every month putting money aside and then 12 months later paying the taxman what my tax liability is. Because I know that whatever money you receive, the temptation is you just spend it all. Of course, when you're young, you don't really save much. Yeah. And especially when you start work and you don't save, then you have problems later trying to pay your taxes. Okay, now with implementation of new tax system or anything else that you want to implement, there may be instances where tax authorities may lack the capacity. They may not have sufficient people with the skills, technical knowledge, and information to enforce tax compliance that leads to disproportionate tax burden of diligent and burdens for diligent and honest taxpayers. So now it's important that when you have a tax system, not only are taxpayers supposed to understand the system, but the tax authorities should also understand the tax system, the collection. So when they investigate companies, they need to know what they are looking at. There's nothing worse than going to a company and sitting down there and suddenly looking at all this information and don't really know what to look at. So there's an education process from both sides. Did I overshoot? Okay. Okay. Different government combines different taxation schemes. Yeah, they introduce tax exemptions, the introduction of tax exemptions, or use tax refunds to pursue their taxation goals, which goes beyond revenue collection. So some countries may have, so in the UK, for example, if you make losses, in Brunei, if you make a loss, you can carry forward your losses 6 years. This is for companies. Yeah? So if you make profit the next year, the next 2-3 years, you can carry forward your losses and offset your losses against the profit. That means, say if you have a loss of 100,000, you got a profit of 50,000 next year, you offset some of your losses against the 50,000, you do not pay any tax. Yeah, but you can carry forward only up to 6 years. In the UK and in Brunei, you can carry forward your loss for 1 year. Now, that is what the law says. But if you go to the Ministry of Finance website, they have taken out the part where you can carry back losses. So we're not sure what it is in Brunei, but of course the law says you can carry back 1 year. In the UK, if you decide to close your business down, you can carry back your losses for 3 years. Yeah, so if you made profit in the last 2-3 years, you can get a tax refund for the losses that you carry back for the last 3 years. So for example, COVID will see a lot of businesses making losses. Yeah, I mean, that's without a doubt. And in Brunei, obviously, with the second wave, you do read in the social media, like internet, the IG and Facebook, a lot of restaurants now have isolated cases, one cases. Some of the supermarkets have had isolated cases. What's the impact? They close down their outlet. Yeah? So when you close down, you don't sell. When you don't sell, you have no income. And if it prolongs, then you will be accumulating losses. So in Brunei, this accumulated losses is unfortunately something that you have to carry with you. And if you still survive at the end of the year, and your business can get back on its feet again next year and the next 2 years, at least you can carry forward your losses to the following years. Yeah? Now in the UK, a lot of companies may decide to close down. There are a lot of departmental stores, a lot of very big brand names have decided to close down, and they can now carry back their losses for 36 months, 3 years. Yeah, so they can get a refund from government. What else is it? Okay, subsistence income may be exempted from income tax. Some goods that are deemed as basic necessities may be exempted from sales and VAT. For example, food, rice, essential products like rice, stable diet, yeah, may be exempted from VAT. Luxurious items may be taxed at a higher rate. But luxurious items, certain branded goods, branded items, yeah. The higher the inequality in society, the more rational for the use of progressive tax. So you have, an income distribution that is so wide that there are more people high income and less, than a progressive tax system is probably more of a system that will be put in place. While in countries where more equitable distribution of income, a flat tax scheme may be preferred as is deemed to be fair to the taxpayers. So if everybody is the same, the old communist China, everybody's got the same income level, then it is a flat rate of tax. Of course, countries like Labuan offshore companies have flat rate of tax because they want to encourage people to set up business as an offshore company in that country. So in Labuan, you just pay a flat rate of tax of 25,000 or 30,000 US. There's no questions asked. Yeah, in terms of your tax returns, in terms of your audited accounts. Okay, what else do I have? Any questions so far? Hello, anything? You can.
All
if you're
clear, sir.
Nothing. Are you all there? I don't see you. Not playing games, watching TV, watching Netflix, talking to family. You're listening to me.
Clear, sir. Yes, sir. Here.
Yeah, we're listening, sir.
Yeah. Only 2 of you listening. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. I know it's not an interesting subject, so when you work from home, you might be lying down in your bed listening to me, so some of you may fall into sleep. but hopefully you're still alert for, say, half an hour or so. Yeah. If you got any questions, you just put in the chat group then. Yeah. Cooking. Yeah. Dah belanja. Okay. Charge your cooking tax. Then you stop cooking. A deterrent for a person to do anything is to put tax on it. Yeah. Okay. So what is subjected to tax? All non-taxes can be split into the major, some of these major categories. Yeah. Taxes on income, profit, and capital gain. So I've mentioned to you, for companies, if you have a taxable profit, then you're taxed on your profit. If you have a capital gain, in other words, if you buy something, so you buy BIBD shares for 10,000 and you sell it for 30,000, then you have a capital gain of 20,000. Yeah. If assuming that we have the UK tax system in Brunei, then any sale will be subject to capital gains. But in Brunei, there is no capital gains tax. So any capital gains you make from the sale of your BIBD shares will be not subject to tax. So maybe you need to consider that when Brunei develops a stock exchange, that means shares are easily traded on the stock market. You can buy and sell shares. Whether those gains will be subjected to capital gains tax. Yeah, it's something that you can introduce if you want to, because then there'll be two types of gains. One is gains as companies. So a company, so I buy, Shazali Berhad buys 10% shares of BIBD. Yeah, and I decided to sell those shares, and then I'm subjected to capital gains under company capital gains. Yeah, so there's a different way of calculating. But if it's me, Shazadi, as an individual that has 5% shares and I sell, then I'll be subjected to personal income tax. Then there'll be a different tax rate. Yeah. So if you do decide to impose capital gains tax in Brunei, then you need to know what kind of system to put in place. So in maybe my third or fourth lecture, what I'll do is I'll combine capital gains for both companies and individuals together, so that you can see the difference in terms of how it is calculated for individuals and how it's calculated for companies. Yeah? So rather than two separate lectures, I'll put it as one, as a combination, so that you can see the comparison. Okay. Taxation on payroll and workforce is normal personal income tax. Taxation on properties. Actually, in Brunei, we do have property tax. This is Cukai Ping 2 as well, I think they call it. But property tax is, for example, I have a property in the UK, I rent it out, I get rental income. That rental income will be subjected to property income tax. Okay. I have a property in the UK. If I don't stay in it and I sell it, then it'll be subjected to certain capital gains tax. The longer you own a property, if it's your principal property, then if it's the only property I have and I stay there and I sell it, I'm not subjected to capital gains tax because it's my principal primary residence. But if it's a property that I have and I rent out, then obviously any gain I make from the sale of the property will be subjected to capital gains tax. Taxes on goods and services, so it's like GST, VAT. Taxations on international trade and transactions. So it could be export tax and other kinds of taxes that are imposed for people who are doing international trade, import duties, export duties, and so on. Yeah. Other taxes are withholding taxes, royalties, and dividends. Now, what this dividends is straightforward. Yeah. If you own shares in the company and the company declares a dividend, the income that you receive from the shares that you own in these companies are known as dividend income. Okay. Royalties. Royalties could be, owning the concession rights of deep water or certain mining areas. Then you get the rights for mining in that area. Then you have to pay royalties to government or to individuals. Yeah? So that's royalties. Withholding taxes. What are withholding taxes? As the name suggests, it is tax that is withheld. Yeah. So in Brunei, like any other country, if you are a non-resident company doing business in Brunei, when you get paid by the contractor in Brunei, the contractor must deduct between 5 to 20% of the invoice value as withholding tax. So if me, Shazali, UK is doing business in Brunei, when I bill for $100, the government or the contractor has to deduct, in this case, it's 10%. Yeah. So instead of getting $100, I only get $90. Yeah, because I am a non-resident doing work in Brunei. So that's what withholding tax is. So to the company in Brunei, the cost is still $100. But what happens is the recipient is $90 goes to me, $10 goes to the Brunei government. Yeah. So that's what withholding tax is. Withholding tax is actually an advanced tax. It's a tax where the local company will deduct. Now, so for me then, as a foreign company, if I think that the amount of tax deducted is too high, I can then file a tax return in Brunei to claim back an overpayment or over deduction of tax. So for example, I bill 100, so withholding tax is on the value, the gross value of the invoice, yeah? So it's 10% of 100. But for tax purposes, you are taxed on your profit, 18.5% of your profit. So you have your income, you have your expense. So your profit is your income less expense, gives you your net profit, and the tax should be based on that net profit. Yeah, in most cases, your actual tax will be much lower than the withholding tax, because withholding tax is on gross. Your corporate tax is based on your profit chargeable to tax. It becomes more understandable once we go through each of the section. Yeah, but I mean, in my years with KPMG, not many companies actually have filed a tax return in Brunei to claim back the over deduction. They've already factored that in their pricing. Yeah, so the hassle of actually submitting all the documents, the timeline, and the chances of getting the tax refund. So a lot of companies actually have not bothered to pursue that angle, although they can if they wanted to. Okay, so the above taxes can be categorized as either direct or indirect taxes. Okay, so what is direct taxes? Direct taxes are taxes that are taxed directly on a company or individual, like corporation tax, personal income tax, inheritance tax, capital gains tax. That is all directly to individuals or companies. Indirect taxes are tax on consumption, VAT, and goods service tax. Okay, so that's an indirect tax, because it's not taxed at me directly, but when I buy something, then I am paying the tax on all the different things that I have purchased. Okay, so now we'll just look at the advantages and disadvantages of the different taxes. Yeah? So direct tax, what are the advantages? Redistribution of income towards the poor taxpayers in the case of a progressive tax system, increases income equality, helps control inflation. Higher tax rate reduces spending at the higher level, yeah, because the more you spend at the higher level, then it increases prices of products. So for example, just look at, Bruneians going to Miri to spend, Singaporeans going to Johor to spend. What happens? The prices of the local goods increases. The local will suffer because suddenly there's inflation for them. But for the Bruneians who actually go across, it is still cheaper for them to buy there compared to here. Yeah. So if you look at it from that perspective, you can see what the inflationary impact is when people start buying at higher level. It's the people at low income will suffer. The advantages of direct taxes, it of course raises the taxpayers' consciousness about government function, and it's a stable source of government revenue. Yeah? When you Google search, you will find that the most common tax system will be corporation tax, income tax, and VAT or GST. Yeah, because there is probably an equal distribution in terms of how much government collects on each of these three different taxes. Yeah? What are these advantages? Reduces incentive to work. Yeah, sometimes because if you're taxed too much at a higher level, then why do I want to go from 25% to a 40% tax rate if I get additional revenue, additional income? Discourage investment and savings. Yeah, because the higher tax you have, that you pay, the lower your disposable income. That means the less you have for investments and savings. Creates incentive to evade tax if the rates are too high. Yeah. So if I'm paying far too much tax, I'm going to find ways by hook or by crook, yeah, to try and reduce my tax liability. High administrative costs in cases of information constraint and complex progressive tax system. So the more complex your tax system, the more difficult sometimes it is for government to collect, because they need to ask so many questions. And then they need to ask for a lot of information. Yeah. So it doesn't help both sides. If government asks 100 questions and they ask for numerous breakdowns of costs and information, the company will be spending a lot of your time trying to comply with the tax requests, that they will then lose time and manpower to actually do operational matters. Yeah. So it's very important that we do not have too high a complicated and complex tax system. Indirect taxes, okay. Advantages is have a broad base. Everyone pays them, including the poorest ones. Yeah, I mean, when you put VAT, when you go to the supermarket and buy your stuff, whether you're rich or poor, you all still have to suffer the VAT. Less painful since they are wrapped in the price. So in other words, when you buy something, I remember the old system. I can't remember when you go and buy something in the shop, you see the price tag, say it says $100. Yeah. When you pay, the till says 105, because the price does not include the tax imposed. So when I buy something, I'm not looking. It annoys me to know that the $100 is not the actual price I'm going to pay. It is 100 plus whatever the tax rate is, 5. I can't remember one of the European countries that I went to. So to me, it's a very annoying tax system. But when you go now to the UK, to Malaysia, to Singapore, when it says $100, $100 includes the VAT and GST. Yeah, so it's important to know that the price that you pay is the actual price which incorporates the GST and the VAT. From an accounting perspective, for the company, they receive revenue of $100, but they have to put aside, say 5%, say $5 as VAT. So their net income is only 95. Yep. So when they sell, the more they sell, the more they put aside for this VAT. Depending on the country system, some require you to pay every month at the end of the month the VAT that you've collected, or some allows you to pay every 3 months. Yeah. But then you need to have a proper accounting system to be able to record what is known as output value added tax. Because when you sell, it's output, because you've included the VAT or GST in your cost. But you have to remember that if you manufacture something, when you buy stuff, when you buy, you also will be paying VAT on the products that you purchase. So that is known as input VAT. Yeah. So you have output, input. Yep. So in a proper tax system, you can offset your output against your input and pay the net difference. Yeah. In most cases, your output should be more than your input. Yep. Because when you buy something at cost, you manufacture, you process it, you also add your costs and you add your VAT. The VAT here should be higher than your VAT that you suffered when you purchase. If it's the other way around, then there's something wrong in your accounting system. Or if it's the other way around, that means your business will collapse pretty soon, yeah, because it's not sustainable. Okay, it's on the advantage, it's convenient to collect because it's at the producer's facilities, it's at the company. So from the taxman's point of view, the VAT is collected on their behalf and then it's paid over to them at the end of the month, or depending on what the payment terms are. Yeah. So all the tax department need to do is to go and do what is known as a VAT audit. Yeah, just to make sure that the invoices have been correctly done, the VAT has been correctly calculated, yeah, based on the company's activities. Okay, allows to reduce harmful consumption. What does that mean? So for cigarettes, for alcohol, the VAT can be much higher. Yeah, apart from import duties, excise duties, they can impose higher VAT on items which are harmful to you. Yeah. Okay, disadvantages are regressive by nature. Poor people pay relatively more than the rich, leads to higher prices of taxable goods and services, and may add to inflation, reduces incentive to produce and consume, reduces aggregate demand and output. Taxpayers may not be aware of taxes paid, hence reducing the civic consciousness. Yeah. So sometimes when you pay from your own pocket, personal income tax, you have certain civic consciousness as to, okay, where's my money going? But when you buy consumable items, you buy whatever items, and the VAT is included, you don't think about, oh, okay, when I buy this fridge, when I buy this TV, where's that VAT money going to be used? So we don't have that conscious mind because it's an indirect tax from that point of view. Yeah. High tax rates may encourage informal production of less developed economies, unstable source of revenue. So VAT can be an unstable source of revenue. Because if the economy goes down, then obviously when sales goes down, economic activities goes down, then the output tax, the VAT will be much lower than in a robust economy. Okay. Let's do tax evasion. Now, if you do Google search, taxation, tax evasion, tax scandals and all that, there are a lot of juicy stories on the internet, yeah, about companies trying to be creative, individuals trying to be creative to reduce their tax liability. Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to pay tax in general, because if there's a tax system in Brunei, when you all say, you know, say a personal income tax is imposed next year, in 2023, okay, not next year. You graduate in 2022, you start work in 2023. The next thing you know is in your salary, you are subjected to 10% tax. That, oh no, I have to pay TAP, I have to pay SCP, now I'm suffering tax. So my net disposable income also reduces. Yeah. So then when net disposable income reduces, what does that mean? That means you have less to spend. When you have less to spend, that has a knock-on effect on the economy in terms of the retail market and the consumer market. Yeah. Okay, tax evasion. Tax evasion is different than tax avoidance. Evasion is you are purposely trying to evade paying tax. Yeah. Tax evasion is a crime, punishable by financial penalties, imprisonment, and both. In Brunei, it's also the same. If you are caught evading tax, you can be fined, heavy penalties imposed, and put in prison. Yeah, and or both. So you can be fined, imprisoned, and fined and imprisoned. Yeah. So that is how serious the crime is. Even when you fail to file your tax returns, it is not a crime, but it is an offense under the Income Tax Act. So if you fail to file your tax returns, who actually will be fined? If it's a Sendram Berhad, who actually will the tax authorities go after? Anybody knows? You can type on the chat. So if a company fails to file the tax returns, who is responsible for filing of tax return? Yeah, correct, the directors. Yeah, not the accountant, not the financial controller, not the auditor. Yeah, a lot of people think it's the accountant's responsibility. That's why, unfortunately, we have a lot of directors in Brunei who are, what is the polite word to use? Okay, they are dormant directors, sleeping directors, non-active directors. They are directors by name. And then when suddenly the tax authorities go after them, you know, then they start to panic. Hey, I didn't know I'm responsible for this. So it is important that when a lot of people suddenly say, oh, I'm a director of this company, I'm a director of that company, and realize that they also have responsibilities. And you will cover this, I'm sure you covered this in your company's company law, or business law, about roles, responsibilities of directors of a company. Yeah. So directors are also not only responsible for the filing of tax returns, but also for the filing of the financial annual returns to the Registrar of Companies. Okay, it is the director's responsibilities, not management's responsibility. Okay, so tax evasion is when a person or company escapes paying tax by concealing the true state of the affairs of the tax authorities. Okay, it covers evasion of income tax, VAT, excise duty, and custom duty fraud. A lot of companies, what they've been doing is, it is also a form of evasion because you're setting up offshore companies to evade tax. Yeah, so you transfer your profit from Brunei to Labuan, from Brunei to Luxembourg, or to Jersey, to Guernsey, Isle of Man. Instead of paying 18.5% tax in Brunei, you're paying 0% tax in an offshore jurisdiction. That is considered as tax evasion. Now, in Brunei, there's no personal income tax. So you may have a Sdn Bhd, you may have a partnership. Okay, so the difference between a sole proprietorship and partnership and a Sdn Bhd is sole proprietorship and partnership are not subjected to tax. And then you have a Sdn Bhd. So if I have a partnership here, Sdn Bhd here, I do all my procurement through this company, then I sell to this company at say 20% profit. I am transferring my profit from the limited company to the partnership. In Brunei, that is not considered as tax evasion because the law permits you to do it. So it is called tax, we call it tax planning or tax avoidance. Yeah. But what the tax department is doing now is they are looking at the relationship between the Sdn Bhd and the partnership. Are they the same people? Yeah. If they're the same people, then obviously that is what is known as transfer pricing issues. And I think I mentioned in my first lecture about BEPS, base erosion profit shifting. I mean, this is a big name just to, it's a new name, it's a different name now for talking about transfer pricing. Yeah, so when you have related party transactions between companies that are related, transactions between directors of companies that are related to other companies, that will be covered under base erosion profit shifting legislation. So you need to fully disclose the profits of all the companies under the group. Yeah, so what's your total profit? What is the total tax paid by the whole company, not only in the group, but globally? If it comes to a certain respectable figure, I think they're trying to say if it comes to about 20% of your profit, then you're not doing any tax evasion scheme. Yeah. So the OECDC last month is recommending that the global tax rate of 20%. So it doesn't matter where your tax is paid, as long as the company globally in total has paid tax of 20%, then the OECDC will accept the tax returns. At the moment, a lot of the big names, they have billions of profit, but they're only paying probably less than 1% tax. So this is what the legislation is trying to do, to avoid tax evasion and tax planning. I think if you seem to be watching a lot of TV now, Cinemax likes to show a lot of old movies. Recently, they showed The Firm, which is Tom Cruise. And basically that movie talks all about tax evasion. Yeah, setting up offshore companies, transferring money from the mafia money, obviously, the drug money from the US out to a tax haven outside the US, the Bahamas, and all these other Caribbean countries, which are tax haven. So that movie talks about all the various tax planning schemes that the legal firm have come up with, to reduce their tax liability in the US. Yeah, so there are some movies that are quite worthwhile watching. I like to watch. Unfortunately, they're quite gruesome movies about drug lords and all that, because it shows how they money launder, how they try and shift money all around the place to avoid paying taxes, or how to avoid getting caught by the authorities with all this stash of money that they have. Yeah. Tax avoidance is where a person or company legally exploits the tax system to reduce tax liability, such as establishing offshore companies. In Brunei, this is done through either sole proprietorship, partnership. Penalty for tax evasion can be anything up to 200% of the tax due and can even result in jail term. In the UK, Her Majesty's Revenue Commission fraud investigation led to over 600 individuals being convicted for their part in tax crimes in 2019. The Tax Investigation Service brings in 5 billion of tax a year through civil and criminal investigation. And tax evasion often occurs in tandem with other crimes such as smuggling and money laundering. Now in the UK, they have a specific fraud investigation department. Now if Brunei have a fraud investigation department or a very good enforcement department, the cost of running this department will be quite small compared to the amount of tax that they can generate. Yeah, so £5 billion of tax is quite a substantial amount. 5 billion, which is about times 2, which is 9 billion Brunei dollars. That is more than the Brunei annual expenditure of 5.85 billion. Yeah, so you can see the significant amount of money that the countries can collect by having a very effective, well-trained, well-informed fraud investigation department. Yeah, so there is something that maybe something you can think about in Brunei. Hey, maybe we need to have a proper enforcement department so that they can do proper investigation to catch companies that are trying to evade paying tax. Okay. Now some big tax evasion cases. If you Google search, you'll find a lot anyway. Yeah. Anthony Blakely and John Bernard, they are directors of ethical trading and marketing, attempted to steal more than 60 million through a fraudulent tax avoidance scheme claiming to invest in HIV research. So a lot of people are trying to tell the government that they're using the money to do research and development. In this particular year, HIV research, now maybe companies might be doing cryptocurrency research, COVID research, whatever scheme they can come up with, yeah, in order to channel the money away from the actual true business. So what they do is they say, okay, we're doing this research, so it becomes an expense. When it becomes an expense, it reduces your taxable income, and hence you pay lower tax. So they were jailed, when they were caught, they were jailed for 14.5 years. Yeah. Another one, a Berkshire-based gang was selling illicit alcohol, were jailed for more than 46 years. They had stole 34 million in VAT and laundered 87 million pounds through more than 50 banks. So what is illicit alcohol? So basically is, you have at the back of your house, you're doing alcohol, you're making beer, whatever, or whatever it is, yeah. And then you sell. And when you sell directly, you're not putting any VAT on it. So then the government loses income from that. Yeah? So the government loses VAT, they loses the different tax imposed on luxurious items and prohibited items. So these guys were jailed for 46 years here for the crime. Yeah? So they laundered 87 million pounds in VAT. 34 million in VAT and 87 million were laundered through different banks. Another case, 5 tax fraudsters who devised a fake eco investment scheme as a tax break for wealthy investors were jailed for a total of 3 years. They were ordered to pay 20 million pounds or face another 29 or 39 years in prison. So now when we talk about sustainable economic, sustainable development goals, different green initiative. So a lot of companies come up with what they call it eco-investment, eco-friendly kind of schemes where you invest, and because it's a scheme that maybe might be recognized by government, the investment is not subjected to any tax for now because it is an investment for the future. So some of these companies have come up with a lot of fake schemes. Yeah, so they take money and then they run away. Now, obviously, they don't invest in any of these schemes. Robert Zulak was part of an organized crime that processed smuggled raw tobacco in illegal factories. He was tracked down to a Prague hideaway. Prague is in Czechoslovakia, and was brought back to the UK to serve 8 years sentence for his part in the 17 million pounds tax fraud. So this would be tobacco tax, VAT. When you smuggle, obviously, you're not paying any other taxes. So he was caught. A father and son was convicted of dishonestly claiming 1 million in VAT repayments after they lied about spending 14 million pounds on building new properties. And Stewart was jailed for helping. And then this other guy, he was jailed for helping them flee the UK to Spain. So if you are an accomplice, you help someone. So if I'm a tax agent, yeah, and I help companies to come out with all this tax avoidance scheme, I can also be charged by the tax department of being abating and helping companies evade tax. Yeah. So as tax agents, we have to also be careful to make sure that we are assisting and helping the clients in accordance with the prevailing law in that country. Okay, what other cases? This is, I think, in the US. Walter Anderson, the biggest tax evasion case in US history. Telecommunication entrepreneur was convicted for hiding earnings through the use of aliases, offshore bank account, shell companies. While on trial in 2006, he admitted to hiding approximately 365 million worth of income. Yeah, how did he hide it? By transferring all this money through all these different bogus companies, offshore companies. Yeah, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison and issued fines of almost 400 million US dollars in back taxes, fees, and penalties. Okay, Al Capone. I'm sure you must have heard of Al Capone, the famous Italian mafia. Prosecutors worked for years to build a case against the notorious Alfonso Scarface Capone. I think the movie is Untouchables. If you watch the movie Untouchables, with Sean Connery and Kevin Costner, it does, talk about how the enforcement people managed to trap Al Capone and managed to get him charged for tax evasion. Sometimes it's not bad watching Netflix, man. Yeah, you do get to learn how these criminals do tax evasion stuff. Yeah, so eventually the only thing that, he was a mafia, he was smuggling, he was doing everything, but of course the law and that time was difficult to charge him. So the only thing that they can get him was on tax evasion. So in 1931, he was sentenced to 11 years imprisonment and fined 80,000. He served only 7 years, but his work to scare other people off. But he worked to scare people off not paying the tax. More than 1 million in unpaid taxes were submitted the year after his conviction. In 1931, 1 million in real terms is a significant lot of money. I think it must be near the end already. Okay, conclusion. Just hoping to do 1.5 hours, yeah? Anything longer than that, you will finish your cooking already, you probably finish your lunch by now. Or do other things. Okay, so in conclusion then, to foster economic growth and development, government needs a sustainable source of funding. Just like when you start work, when you decide to have a certain lifestyle, you want to go with your friends, you want to do this, you want to travel, you want to buy this stuff and that stuff, you need to have a sustainable level of income. Yeah, if you do not have a sustainable level of income, you're unable to live your normal lifestyle. Yeah, so it's the same for government. So you need to have sustainable sources of funding for social programs and public investments. Programs providing health, education, infrastructure, and other services are important to achieve the common goal of a prosperous, functional, and orderly society. Yeah, without this investment, there will be destruction in terms of what can be done in the country. Look at Afghanistan. Yeah, the military forces have left. What are their main source of revenue in terms of the country, the money that they need to help support the economy? 20 years ago, the biggest revenue for Afghanistan, do you know what it is? Anybody? Heroin, opium. Yeah, Afghanistan has got one of the biggest opium farms, plantation in the world. And that was the biggest source of revenue for the country. So you could find opium, I can't remember, what's the figure, 30–40% of the opium, heroin, and everything else in the US has come from Afghanistan. So then the question is now, then obviously when the US forces took control, opium was not sold because it's a drug. Yeah? So now, in order to build the economy, in order to get sustainable revenue, how is Afghanistan going to support its interest? You know, the country has been so destroyed by the war. They need to spend a lot of money to improve the infrastructure, to improve the education infrastructure, to improve accessibility, to improve the investment climate. So they need a lot of money. They may have to go back to the opium trade in order to support the economy. Yeah. So in Brunei, if you look at Wawasan 2035, what is going to be the major source of revenue in 2035? 2035 is not far away, only 14 years from now. If the oil and gas sector is not a major contributor to tax revenue, then what are the sectors that can contribute to the increase in revenue? It's going to be a tough job for us, but we have a highly educated society. Most Bruneians speak English. Most Bruneians are computer literate. So we could develop ourselves into Islamic offshore center, a processing center, a fund management center, insurance, reinsurance, takaful, retakaful center, you know, where we develop the financial sector. As our major economy, I think I mentioned last week, yeah, when I went to Luxembourg with AMBD, which is not a central bank, my KPMG office for population of just double size of Brunei. Brunei, we have 20. My KPMG office in Luxembourg had more than 2,000 employees. So, you know, imagine for the size of Luxembourg, we have 1,000 employees in Brunei. That is a significant economic activity in that country. Yeah? So Luxembourg developed itself as a premier site for obviously fund management, investment management, portfolio management. In fact, when I went to Luxembourg, when we went to a town, you know, you thought you were in Kuwait, because they converted the whole town into like a Kuwait city. And one of the biggest investors and fund that is managed in Luxembourg is the Kuwait Investment Fund, yeah, which is worth, can't remember, a few $100 billion US. So they converted, so the Kuwait Investment Office had their Bedouin tent, everything, you know, Arabic coffee and what have you, in terms of, and then, so when I was there, I said, hey, am I in Luxembourg or am I in the Middle East? Yeah. So that's how significant impact the economy can have if you develop these other sectors properly. So I think, you know, in terms of Brunei, I don't see any reason why we cannot. I mean, not to the size of Luxembourg. We have no foreign debt. We have not borrowed money from overseas. Our sovereign risk is low. So, you know, we try to develop, I think, improve our infrastructure in terms of IT, accessibility, internet, make it cheaper, make it faster. There's no reason why we cannot then become a processing hub for a lot of things. In fact, Brunei can also be what's known as a service center for a lot of companies. Yeah? So, for example, like Huawei, you know, the company, mobile phone giant. Huawei, they do infrastructure and they do have phones as well. When I visited the company in Shenzhen, because their headquarters is in China, their training center, because KPMG are the group auditors, so we went for a meeting in Shenzhen. Their training center is bigger than UBD. It is massive and it's highly intelligent. Once you go in there, they already recognize you. So, you know, the first time I go in, I got my pass. Every time I go past, I say, hello, Shazali. Yeah, it's like a Facebook, they recognize your face. So wherever I am, if Huawei has their device, they will know where I am. Yeah. And Shenzhen grew because of Huawei. So Huawei provided job opportunities for, I can't remember, a few 100,000 people. Because not only are they the training center, but they are also the manufacturing center for all the mobile phones and for all the infrastructure. So the city was developed. In fact, not the hotel, the service apartment that we were put in when I stayed is actually owned by Huawei. So anybody that has business with Huawei, whether you're the contractor, consultant, you stay there. Yeah? They put you on this place. It's like a hotel as well. and they provide transportation from this place to the offices. It is fantastic how one company can develop that city into a significant economic player just because of their global presence. Yeah? So it is something that maybe can be done here. Nothing is impossible. Okay, all governments need revenue, but the challenge is to carefully choose not only the level of tax rates, but also the tax base. Yeah, who do you want to tax at what rate? Everybody wants money. Yeah, Ministry of Health wants money, finance, defense, education, communication. So everybody needs to put a budget. And if the government does not have sufficient revenue to cover the budget, then they need to find money from somewhere else. Okay? So like you and me, yeah? If I spend more than what I earn, I need to, in your case, if you spend more than what you earn, you probably go to your parents and say, Mom, Dad, can I have money? So you either ask from someone, you use your savings, or you borrow. Yeah. So when government runs a deficit system for such a long time, and it keeps dipping into its savings, there will come a time where there will be no more savings. So then how does the government increase its revenue? Yeah? So that is basically the key to your assignment. How can government increase its tax revenue to ensure that it has a sustainable development of the economy? Actually, a lot of the government budget goes towards paying government salaries. Yeah? If you just go through the JPK or you go to the Ministry of Finance report, you can see the breakdown. You can see how much of it goes to paying government salaries. So is corporatization one of it? The government need to scale down, but then if you scale down, how do you account for people who are not working then? Yeah? So there are a lot of things that you can consider. Okay. Government also needs to design a tax system that will not discourage taxpayers from participating. When the government actually reduced the tax rate from 30% to 18.5% in Brunei and have a tapered tax system, a lot of companies then decided to show their true profit. Yeah, because if you show 1 million profit in the old days, you're paying 300,000 tax. If you show 1 million profit now, with the different refunds and different formulation that you have, you're actually paying less than 150,000 in tax. So to show the same amount of tax, you can show a profit of 2 million, you're still paying the same number of tax that you paid at a 30% rate. So a lot of companies now, instead of doing tax plannings to reduce their tax liability, because the tax rate has gone down to a much lower level, they are showing an increase in revenue, an increase in profitability. And when you show an increase in profitability, an increase in revenue, that means every year you're showing an increase in your net asset value of your company. Yeah. So your retained earnings is increasing. When retained earnings increase, capital plus reserve will start increase. So the net assets of companies are starting to increase. And this is important because if companies decide to float in the stock market, they need to show a sustainable level of profitability and income growth. Yeah, and by reducing the tax rate, companies probably showing a much more truer picture of the activities and the profitability level of that company. Efficient tax administration can help encourage businesses to become formally registered, thereby expanding the tax base, increasing tax revenues. Now in Brunei, I think there's more than 8,000 companies registered as Berhad. And I think if you look at the ROCB, it's more than 10,000, 12,000, I think. From what I understand, less than 5,000 are registered under the STAR system, which means we have more than 5,000 companies still not registered. Yeah. So if companies do not register, there is a potential loss of revenue for the Brunei government, because then there might be companies who are subjected to tax that have not been registered. That means there are tax revenues lost by the Brunei government. Or not only Brunei government, or any other country. Yeah? In other countries, if a company is not registered and escaped the tax system, that means they're not part of the tax payers system. Okay. In many transition economies in the 1990s, the failure to improve tax administration when the new system was introduced resulted in the uneven imposition of tax, widespread tax evasion, and lower than expected tax revenue. So it is very important that when new tax is implemented, the new tax system is in place, or as an assessment of the current tax system, there has to be a proper transitional process. When Malaysia decided to implement GST, it took 5 years to implement. Yeah. So in Brunei, if we do decide to implement any new tax system, there has to be a grace period. Yeah. Not okay, from next year, 1st January 2022, this new tax is going to be introduced. Because if you do that, there will be a total failure in the whole tax system, because one, the taxpayers have not geared themselves, they have not done the system, they have not put the system in place. For example, if you decide to do VAT, you need to change your whole accounting system. You need to change the whole recording of your input-output tax. The government also needs to have well-trained individuals who understand what VAT is or GST is, how to administer, how to look at the returns, how to investigate companies, and what is the registration process, the administration process, and the enforcement process. Yeah. So that is very important. Probably nearly done. Okay. Compliance with tax laws is important to keep the system working. One way to encourage compliance is to keep the rules as clear and simple as possible. I think with due credit to the Brunei government, apart from withholding tax, I think we do have quite, well, now it's already much better. Withholding tax was introduced in 2008, so it's more than 10 years. But when it was first introduced, nobody knew what happened. Yeah, because they introduced the law in August in 2009, but they introduced it in August in 2008, but the law was backdated to be effective 1st January 2008. Yeah, on withholding tax. So there were a lot of companies that suddenly, because the law was not in place, when you backdate the law, a lot of people are caught. And when you do that, then it causes a lot of problems, a lot of grumblings in the Brunei economy. And of course, suddenly people have to pay tax, which they were not subjected to, had this law not been backdated. So we, the Chambers of Commerce and a lot of the business sector, had what we call it an intellectual discussion about what needs to be done. And then the government changed to say that, okay, any payments made after 1st August of 2008 will then be subjected to withholding tax. But the problem is, when the law came out in August, when you say with effect from 1st August, a lot of people still have not done the relevant payments of directors' fees, dividends, technical support fees, management fees, and payments to offshore companies. So then they're still caught in that trap. Yeah. And a lot of people who are under long-term contracts, where say you have 5 to 7 year contract with Brunei Shell, BA, and other companies, when they put in the tender, there was no withholding tax, and suddenly there's withholding tax. So their prices suddenly is not competitive because they had to suffer 20% withholding tax. Where in the past, instead of getting 100, now they only get $80. So that had a significant impact on a lot of the contractors in Brunei. Yeah. So the government had to then reverse some of the decisions. And for a few years, Brunei Shell, BLNG, the BDB and Total became exempted companies from paying or deducting withholding tax. So that's the problem, is when you do not have a proper, clear implementation policy, it causes a lot of heartache to not only the taxpayers, but to the economy and to government. Yeah. So when you have to reverse decisions, then it doesn't look good. Yeah. So that's why any system that you put in place has to be clear, simple, easy to understand, easy to implement. And there should be, maybe before you do it, a dialogue period. Yeah. So if I want to do VAT in 3 years' time, we should start having dialogue sessions now between the government, the tax department, and the companies and the individuals that will be subjected to all this VAT. So that come in 3 years' time, there'll be no excuse. Yeah. They say, oh, nobody told us. But if you have a proper roadshow, a proper, media that is done, proper channeling of this information, dissemination of information to the general public, then come 3 years' time, it's going to be very difficult for you to argue that you did not know about it. Yeah, I mean, this is classical of the record keeping order when it came out, where companies are required to keep records. I mean, till today, a lot of companies don't know that they have to comply with it. Even though I get involved with a roadshow every month, but because of COVID, this month we didn't do it. There's only about 60 companies that come and listen. But you know, when you talk about record keeping, you're talking about 128,000 registered companies in Brunei. So we're only covering a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Yeah. So when you decide to do your tax system, it has to make sure that it has a wider coverage, because you can be rest assured that if it's unfair tax system, it is not a simple tax system. There will be a lot of people who will do illegal businesses, or they will probably do a lot of creative accounting to make sure that they do not pay as much tax as they're supposed to pay. Okay. Overcomplicated tax system associated with high tax evasion, correct? High tax compliance costs associated with larger informal sectors, more corruption and less investment. So higher compliance cost means the more complex the tax system, that means the more you may have to recruit people or use consultants to help do your tax computation. And that will take time. That means a lot of information needs to be disseminated, to be gathered, and that will certainly lead to more corruption and less investment in the particular industry. Economies with simple, well-designed tax system are able to boost businesses' activities and ultimately investment and employment. Yeah. So of course, it's always easier said than done. It's easy to say, "Oh, I have a very simple tax system," but in a place like Brunei, where people have never paid tax in all their life, and suddenly you want to impose personal income tax, you want to impose VAT, then it becomes painful. People only make noise when it affects their pocket. Yeah. So like Jerodong Park, when it used to be free and suddenly now you have to pay, I said, you know, malaskan membayar, you know, why I have to pay when it was free? So like Temborong Bridge, when you make it free now to go to Temborong, it's going to be very difficult to start imposing toll. Yeah. Do you charge toll only for Malaysian or foreign registered cars? Which I think should at least be the minimum anyway. But I think if people know why they're paying the toll, because by using the Temborong Bridge, if you go to KK, now that, you know, assuming we are in a COVID-free world, yeah, you can save more than 2 hours in journey time. And then you save the hassle of having your passport being checked so many times. So even charging, I don't know, $10, $20 is not so you pay toll to Limbang, you pay toll to KB. Yeah? I mean, that's $3, I think, to go to Miri. So I think for a fantastic, in fact, you're paying for a nice sightseeing view anyway, a nice bridge, nice view. So I think people shouldn't complain. Yeah. Although, as I mentioned last week, when you go to hospital, $1 pun, people are making noise. Just $1, $3, $5. I mean, you know, the time that you spend, the ubat that you get is a fraction of the cost. So, but there's a problem is when you're used to getting something for nothing, when you have to pay for something people don't like to pay for anything. Okay. Research have shown that it takes a company longer on average to comply with VAT than to comply with corporate income tax. Okay. However, compliance tends to take less time in economies where the same tax authorities administers VAT and corporate income tax. So what does that mean? If you have a tax authority that is in charge of both corporate and VAT, then it's easier for them to implement the policy because they are one department. But if you start splitting it to enforcement that, okay, I'm in charge of corporation tax, I'm in charge of income tax, I'm in charge of VAT, you're completely segregated, yeah, it's not part of one umbrella. So you do your own bit on VAT, you do your own bit in income tax, you do your own bit on corporate tax. Then it becomes disjointed and becomes very ineffective kind of administrative system. So it's always better to have everything administered under one department, under one umbrella. The danger of splitting the task is you may find that each of these departments are trying to compete against each other to see who can raise more tax. Yeah, because it shouldn't be a competition who can raise more, but it should be a system of efficiency and correcting what is fair and justable in terms of the economic environment, in terms of this situation on hand. So, sometimes people want to encourage investment, want to encourage companies to plow back the profit into the business, to expand the business. They reduce the tax rate, or they may increase the capital allowance rate, so that when you buy investments, you buy machines, you get 100% allowance. But I will cover that in my lecture, my PowerPoint lecture on capital allowances, yeah? how that will impact on the tax system. Okay. So modernization of IT infrastructure and the introduction of a unified tax management system increases efficiency and reduces physical interaction between tax officials and taxpayers. And that's true in Brunei. When STARS was first introduced, obviously, the first year it was introduced about 6-7 years ago, a lot of problems, because it's totally IT based, it's totally, everybody needs to be linked, everybody needs to have a unique identification code. You need to be authorized by the company to be a tax agent, then there's a different process. And the problem with the system was you could not cope with the volume of people that were trying to submit information and to submit the tax on time. So what I did in the first few years, because in case my clients charged with late filing, is if you have problems logging in, problems uploading, I'll get a copy signed, I do a covering letter, get my staff to go to the tax department and get them to stamp receive in physical format to show that we did actually try to submit on time. But now the system is, if you look at ease of doing business, I think Brunei's tax system is the top 10. But I think a lot of countries now have improved their system. So IT technology plays a very important role. But then you have to remember that if you have a total online system, self-assessment system, everybody in the country must be connected. Yeah. And in a society where there's a disparity in terms of the income gap level, you can be certain that people at low income level may not have any access to the internet, may not have access to they may not have any bank account for that matter. They may be low income level. So there might be a lot of the society, part of society that may not be able to do their tax returns, even though it's a nil tax return. So for example, like now with COVID, a lot of people are studying from home. I think at your level, I think you should be fortunate that you do have access to internet, you do have a tablet or a laptop, but maybe some of you may have families, kids young, even kindy, nursery school, they need to be connected to their class. There are still thousands and thousands of family in Brunei that not only do they not have a tablet, they do not have even internet connection, because internet connection is still very expensive and unreliable. So a lot of people say positive things about COVID in terms of digitalization, about how government and how people have increased the use of social media, internet, online business. But I feel that COVID digitalization as well, we have, I call it the digitalization disparity gap, because there's still a lot of people, especially in ASEAN, where the GDP per capita of people like in Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, and the other Indo-China countries, they have very low income level. And a lot of them have been disadvantaged by COVID because they just have no access to education at all. Yeah? And I think in Brunei, some of my friends are telling me that some of them, they have not had any classes for 1 year. It's just because they have no access. Although, they try to send written textbook, but when you send written forms and you cannot get connected to the class, it's more like self-study. Yeah. So, although technology plays an important role, I mean, just like this lecture now, I still hate it. Yeah, I hate it. I don't quite like my online lectures where I only see myself, I don't see anybody else in my PowerPoint. But I think the way that it is going, I suspect we will not have any more physical class till the end of the year. Today is September. We had 100 odd cases. 100 odd cases, yeah, 100 over cases yesterday. So you need to have 2 weeks of 0 and then 4 months. So we're talking about October, by end of October, to have a relaxation in the lockdown, which I don't think will happen now. So all the ASEAN Business Investment Summit, all the ASEAN Business Award, that's supposed to be a physical blended award, I think now will have to be done, all be done online or virtual. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it. What's the last one? Finito, maybe. Yeah, so there you are. Thank you. And then all the best with your assignment. So basically, the purpose of this today is just to give you a bit of background about taxation system, disadvantages, advantages, what are the core principles of a good tax system. Something for you to start thinking about, yeah, since it's 60% of your marks. So I just hope it's useful in terms of your general understanding about the importance of having a good taxation system in any economy, whether it's in UK or other parts of the world or in Brunei. Yeah. So when you start looking at your assignment in terms of Brunei, don't put down 10 different kinds of tax system to be introduced. Concentrate on 1 or 2, maximum 2. Then at least you can do a proper write-up about the tax that you want to implement. You can implement taxes that are not included here. Yeah? You can, by Googling search, but there might be other taxes which you think might be relevant to Brunei. I mean, for example, Saudi many years ago decided to impose tax on the expatriate because they have no personal income tax. Yeah? So they decided to impose tax on the expatriate. You want to do that in Brunei? But of course, in Saudi, it backfired because they relied on the expatriate community for the oil and gas sector. So they had to reverse the decision about imposing tax. Because when you impose tax on individuals or on specific societies, yeah, so say, for example, the expatriate community, then to them it becomes less attractive in working in Brunei because now they're suffering tax. They might as well go to another country where they don't pay tax, yeah, or they can get better income. So that is something. So in Saudi, they tried to implement taxation on expatriates only, and they had to reverse their decision because they didn't think properly about the implication. So that is the important thing about tax system is, yeah, it sounds good. Okay, the expatriates are working here, they're earning high salary, let's tax them. But what happens if they decide to do a massive exodus out of the country? They leave the country, then there's nobody there to run the oil and gas sector companies, no more engineering companies that are helping support the oil and gas sectors and supporting industries. Then that will have an even worse detrimental impact on the oil and gas sector economy of Saudi Arabia. So they had to reverse the decision. Yeah. So that's basically the kind of things that you have to think about now, you know, when you start thinking about your assignment. It's quarter to 2 already. Wow, I really talked a lot. Any questions or anything before I sign off? Are you all having lunch now? Yes. Anybody? So I hope you found the lecture useful, the information useful. Yeah.
No questions, sir.
No questions from you. Okay. Anybody else? Nothing?
No
Okay.
question.
Okay then. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, nice. Suddenly everything. Okay then. Stay safe. Stay vigilant.
Thank you, sir.
Eat well. Sleep well. Study well. I hope you're not too bored at home. I find my eyesight is getting bad with all this online. But staring at the computer is not good. I can't even read my PowerPoint. I have to shift my glasses. We had our faculty meeting yesterday, and I did the same as you. I didn't put on my camera. Only a few of them put their camera on, those who wanted to talk. So I said, no, okay, so this is how it is being on the opposite side. So you can do other things rather than listen to, you know, your dean talking to you. Yeah. Okay then, so thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy your weekend, and see you next week. Same time. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you,
sir.
sir. Take
Thank you,
care.
sir.
Take care. Stay safe. Stay
Thank you,
healthy.
sir.
Bye.